What to do? What's up, coin traders? Thanks for joining me for the show. Going to be looking at Near Protocol, NEAR, on that ticker, currently at 185.76, fluctuating right there. Did print an extremely nice bullish looking candle. So if we do zoom into it, one of the big highlights right now is just looking at the exponential moving averages right now. We're starting to see an extreme bullish cross right now, breaking a bullish from this big 50 EMA point of resistance that we were looking at. And then having the current candle that just closed on the daily with a big lower shadow on this candle, and then also seeing a very nice body to the upside. And if we actually want to pull up volume and take a look at that, we actually got a lot of nice volume as well. Now, not as significant as the one that initially blew us up into this exponential moving average point of resistance zone. But still, nonetheless, after facing a little bit of tapering off bull volume and especially a little bit of conflicting bear volume when we did test this 50-period EMA, the fact that we got a lot of nice volume to the upside, and a lot of this is due to the fact that we had a lot of growth coming in right now for Bitcoin as well. So that definitely led to a very nice close for a lot of these other big crypto names. But especially now looking at the exponential moving averages on this daily, looking extremely nice in the current chart setup just because we are looking at a little bit more of that upside. And then now also we do have room, since we have rallied enough to actually retrace and backtest this previous line of support right at 165, which would be a very nice opportunity as well to see these exponential moving averages roll up and actually have the price backtest those, confirm them as support, and then hopefully see more of that follow through to the upside, and we will be on our way. So now one of the other good things about what happened with the current candle close and where we're at right now is that our previous trend high was sitting back on the 7th of December when we had a high trend come in for 183. So if we look where the current candle just closed, we're looking at a high of 183.9. So barely breaking it, nonetheless seeing that high. And then now, especially with a little bit more follow through, getting that higher high compared to our previous trend high before pulling back to set our low. So now the fact that we're actually bullish on top of these exponential moving averages is an extremely good sign, because if we do zoom out a little bit, then you can see that the last time we were seeing prices on top of the EMAs, the exponential moving averages, was actually back in September of 2022. So even during the FTX flush, we were actually still seeing resistance on that line. So obviously a downside move in that instance extremely carries down to the lower price lows that we were establishing. So now to be able to get back above that, especially after sitting so far and so long below these exponential moving averages, is a little bit more of that bullish sign. But what we don't want to have happen is what we had happen back in September, where we get a little bit of an upside move, slightly carry to the upside, and then a complete flush, rejecting it and then holding these EMAs that whole way back down once again. And currently, I still think that crypto's due for a little bit of oversold or overbought retracement, just because this little relief rally has been a little too strong right now, given the overall bearish market conditions. And in strong markets, we actually do need a retracement, pulling back, confirming some previous resistances as supports to then be on our way once again. So personally, although we're still finding a lot of great bearish or bullish looking signs, it's definitely not a time, in my opinion anyway, to start going and FOMOing into a lot of these positions. But of course, not financial advice, but just how I'm playing out my own personal trading strategies in this crypto space right now. So now one thing that I actually do want to do is flip over into the weekly, and we are in the log scale right now. So one of the things is that I've been talking about falling wedges for a while on a lot of the cryptos, and that's no different right now than what we're actually seeing with Near Protocol. And as you can see, there's a very nice solid support trend line to the downside that we have been kicking off ever since November of 2021, pretty much right when the rest of the crypto space was finding their all-time highs. So we actually found that a couple months down the road for Near Protocol, and now you can see we are still set up in a very nice potential for a little bit more of that wedge. So if we actually extend this out to look at the apex, then you can see that we're still looking at very much like about May-ish into when we could experience the apex happening. So we could be looking at a breakout prior to that. Now, if we do potentially see a lot more upside and continuation, we could be experiencing that soon. But that's another reason why a lot of these cryptos are actually in this falling wedge pattern, where we do have the apex sitting up for basically about the start of the summer or in late spring of this year. So keep in mind too that the pattern's still playing out. So for example, just because we did have our trend high and pulled back and saw this relief rally doesn't mean we were breaking bullish on top of it. So we actually found it as a big point of resistance, rode it the whole way down, and then actually now we're at that point where we can see a little bit of oversold bounce and a little bit of that relief rally. So definitely no guarantees just yet, just because we have seen a couple days of nice upside with follow through. We do have to be mindful of the longer, greater patterns that we're looking at. But while we are looking at this weekly chart, let's go ahead and talk about some longer term resistances as well as the support that we're looking at right now. So let's start with support. And as you can see, weekly closing support's coming in right at 126, almost 127, where we've had 3 weeks of continuous tests and confirmation that this support line has been holding. And if we do look to the left here, right when we had near protocol get released, we actually found that as a big point of resistance prior to running up. So next up, overhead for support. We are going to be looking at a pretty big level of support, not too far from where we're at now, which would be right at 190. So looking left, big point of support on the summer of 2021 when the rest of the crypto space was pulling back. And so we have had this level tested several times and confirmed as support, as well as when we did have it as resistance prior to running up and then resistance right off the initial launch. So we know that this is still going to be a significant and relevant resistance line that could potentially become flipped and support once again, just like what we saw back in the summer of 21. So if we also look at the exponential moving average, first is the 12 period coming in right now at 197.3. And so on the last time that we did have a bounce that rallied up to test even the 12, we could see that prices did get stuck up in between the zone between the 12 and the 26. So I could see that being a very good case as well, that we could ultimately end up breaking these big resistance zones and then actually seeing another run up to get stuck pretty much right in the middle in between the 12 and the 26 as well. So a big potential price for that could be sitting right around 261. So if we draw a price line there and look to the left, of course, seen as very nice support as well as big resistance prior to setting this initial trend high when we did top out at about 740 back in the spring of 2021. So this could end up being a very nice target to the upside because that would also have the price sitting right in between the 12 and 26 period exponential moving averages as well. So if that is the potential target to the upside, then I would love to see, and it's pretty likely at that point, then we would be able to see a little bit longer of a hold and closing support on top of 190. And so if any of those targets do end up hitting, then that's pretty much going to carry us out of into a bull break basically from this falling wedge resistance line. So that would end up seeing a little bit more upside. So we also have to be extremely mindful of the resistance provided by this downside wedge. So that's another thing that we're going to be looking at to the upside. So we are going to have 190 as well as the 12 period EMA and then also the the descending line of resistance that we're looking at. Now I wanted to switch over into the 4 hour because after a huge spike that we just saw close and carry us into breaking a new trend high, it's very similar to what we already experienced previously coming off of the bottom. So after a huge run up, had a very nice pullback kicking off the 26 period EMA on this 4 hour chart. But then something else to be mindful of is that on the recent test, we actually retraced to the 50 period EMA. So typically when we get retracements and tests, we do see tests start to fall off between each line on each test. So the first test might bounce off the 12 period, the next test the 26, and then finally the 50 period. So right now we could be looking at the 50 period as being an extremely relevant guide for whether or not we can continue to see prices heading back to the upside. Quite frankly, no, after such a big and significant move for a period of time, I'm actually still expecting kind of what we saw in this instance where we did have a little bit more of that bull flag. So we do need to allow the bulls a period of time to actually pull back. And likely in that instance, we're looking at supports being about 170 and potentially even down to about 166. So if that does happen, depending on how long, then we would likely see these exponential moving averages carrying over and being that very supportive guide to allow support to maintain. And so kind of over the short term, that's pretty much what I am going to be expecting, since it does seem like the most likely path right now at the current moment. Now, if we flip over to the 1 hour really quick before we wrap up, then I just want to point out and talk about this type of candle setup because it's not very bullish from the current point. Now, it's obviously bullish from when we bounced off the bottom, and it's great to see a couple of really nice solid candles. But when we start to see candles that start to look like this, where we end up getting basically diminishing body sizes and then also kind of more of like an uptrending linear pattern, then that typically ends up meeting with a pretty substantial bear flush. So we see this all the time. And obviously it's not a guarantee, but when we talk about the amount of selling pressure generated by these upside wicks in this linear trend fashion, and especially let's go ahead and pull up the volume right now. So as you can see, we're looking like not much volume right now at all, especially after having a lot of big bull volume, and then even an extremely conflicting volume for this bear, which actually ended up being a spinning top candle. So a lot of indecisive action, and then ultimately end up seeing upper size wicks being about comparable to the lower shadows, as well as a minimal sized body, creating this red-green-red pattern, or green-red-green, excuse me, and that's also bullish engulfing. But we're currently looking at a not that great of a sign in this continuation pattern, because effectively is what happens is that if we look at the 5-minute, for example, then this kind of creates more or less a rising wedge ultimately. So as you can see, that's what we're looking at right now. And that's pretty much what we do end up keeping our eye on, and what ultimately does break, especially after so much bullish volume has come in for buying. So getting a bearish break, which is kind of what we're expecting right now, is going to confirm a trend high to come in. So likely in that instance, we will expect a little bit more of that consolidation on the longer term charts. And so that could be another potential great entry opportunity if that's what you're looking to do on this play for Near Protocol. So yeah, I mean, over the last week and a half or so, very nice bullish setup going on right now. And although the bulls still have a lot to prove in the short term, we're still thinking that this is a very nice bullish opportunity. So we are still expecting a little bit more of that retracement though, especially as the rest of the crypto space has just been buying for the last week and a half or 2 weeks, basically. So going to be expecting a little bit more of a stabilization, a little bit long-term stagnation, and pretty much just being able to confirm some of these lower supports that were previous resistance. So once that happens, then that'll be a much better sign once the follow through carries back out to the upside. Otherwise, if we do lose some of those supports, then we will pretty much be confirming that our trend highs are in, and that we're going to be looking down for tests of some of the lower lows as support. And then so obviously in that instance, then that's pretty much where we do look for the bulls to set a higher low and then rally back up to test the trend highs. So those are the 3 different scenarios that we could end up seeing play out. So the first one being basically consolidation happening right now with further upside. Next one being a retracement, losing the higher lows and basically continuing to the downside, or then also being able to set a higher low and then rally and actually see a break. For that though, let's go ahead and look at a Fibonacci for what we could need to see. So if we go from the low, we would actually need to see a support holding pretty much to have a likely scenario of holding a higher low to confirm a new higher high in the shorter term anyway, of holding about the 38.2, which comes in right at 1.624. So if we do see prices get down to 162.4, and that's pretty much going to be an extremely good level as well, because if we look on this chart, big support prior to the bullish candle that just closed. Let's highlight it again, big support, and then also looking left, big resistance before actually breaking it on this bullish candle. So a very big relevant line that I would expect to hold in the event of a little bit more of that shorter term pullback. So yeah, I would love to know everyone's thoughts down in the comment sections below for Near Protocol. If you're buying right now, what your plays are, what your thoughts and targets, and also whether you disagree, agree, all that stuff. So yeah, love commenting with everyone. Drop me a note down in the section below. But otherwise, that will go ahead and take us out of the show. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you haven't done so just yet. Do appreciate all the continued love and support. It means so much. Stay safe, take care, and I'll catch you back in the next video.